The tall, gangly thing?
Hello and welcome. Today I'm joined by the product lead for Teamfight Tactics. It's Riot's very own Green Teej. TJ, thank you so much for sitting down with me today. How are you doing?
I'm pretty good. Thanks so much for inviting me. It's a great day today.
Absolutely, yeah. So for anyone who may not be super familiar with who you are, why don't you just go ahead first and tell me a little bit about yourself?
Yeah, sure. As mentioned, I'm TJ, product lead for TFT. What I do on TFT is sort of kind of lead the vision and roadmap and priorities for the game. So what do we work on next? What are the features that we're going to be prioritized? What are the things we're going to be working on? As well as helping build morale in the team, set vision, and just kind of be there for anyone who needs the help and guidance on the team, just generally.
Yeah, so I mean, it kind of sounds like you are a bit more involved with like the macro part of TFT, right? Rather than like the balance side of it, where it's these really specific things. Can you kind of talk about the journey you've taken to actually get to where you are on the TFT team?
Yeah, of course. It's been a wild journey, definitely. Just at Riot. I started at Riot as a marketing associate, kind of just doing digital advertising, doing my day to day, and I knew for a long time that that wasn't what I wanted to do long term. I wanted to work on the game that I love passionately, so I had my eyes set on that for a long time, about 6 years from now. I made my way through thinking about things in terms of the data space because there was a connection between marketing and data, and I found my way eventually onto the strategic advisory team, which kind of advises folks like myself in this role of like, hey, here are some of the opportunities that are in front of us based off the data we're seeing, based off research and et cetera. That eventually led me to this role opening about, I want to say 2 years ago. And I knew that that was my dream job. I've been playing TFT at the time. I loved the game. I was a huge auto chess player before TFT was out. And I applied, and to be honest, I was a little surprised, but I got it, and it's been a great journey ever since. It's amazing. I couldn't be happier with the opportunity I've had. I can't be happier with the game that we've created so far. It's just been absolutely incredible.
So you actually had a bit of a career change from like your previous position into this one. Well, I mean, what was that feeling like where you're actually going from one, this giant career change, but two, into a game that you previously had been playing quite a bit of?
It's definitely a sticker shock working on something that you play day in and day out because when I wake up, I'm thinking about TFT. When I'm working, I'm thinking about TFT. And then at night, I'm thinking about what's the best meta right now that I can play. And they're all
Right,
different,
right.
different ways of thinking of the game. But it's helped me a lot in just finding so much passion and also being able to take that passion and understanding as a player to connect that back towards how can we make this game even better. So I think both in terms of happiness, it's better, but also I think it's made me much more better at my job. I'm able to take those insights from just living and breathing the game to the actual work that we do every day.
Do you ever feel like there's a difficulty in like the work-life balance when you are so obsessed with your work that it's also a part of your hobby as well, right?
Definitely hard to separate, the two. I think for myself, and everyone's different. It's pretty easy for me to like take those breaks and kind of go on a vacation or put down TFT mobile for a little bit and to enjoy the outside for a bit. So I'm generally pretty good at that. But it is definitely hard for some people. I definitely know it's
Sure,
if
yeah.
you love the game and you work on it, it's just that's all your life becomes sometimes.
Now let's talk about Set 6, because Set 6 was released a bit over a month ago. I mean, it has been quite the release. Definitely a very, very fun set. I mean, we have some brand new content. We've got Double Up. We've got the Chibis coming out. It seems like a big success, but I would love to know internally, I mean, what has the reception of Set 6 been like to you guys?
Oh, it's been one very relieving to see what we spent probably over a year on all the collective things that eventually became Set 6 on, having such positive
Oh,
reception across the entire board. I think, when you make so many bets, you kind of assume, we're not going to get everything perfect, but it was very relieving to see that there was such positive reaction for the new set, the Chibi Champions, the Double Up release, and then all the other cosmetics and content and experiences that we created around it. That's always a bit nervous as we go into that set launch moment where we're putting all of our eggs in that set basket. But the team, the results, players are playing more than we could ever ask for, and as a result, the team is incredibly happy. We're super stoked. It was a great way, definitely, to end out the year for us.
so you actually mentioned there were features that you guys had been building out for a year in the making. Can you talk like specifics on that? Is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Double Up is the biggest one that comes to mind, but Chibi's also fall in that category. We've known for a long time that we wanted to create a Double Up mode. In fact, I would say it's technically 2 years in the making. Two
Wow.
years ago, we had a prototype that we were working on. Gave it some play tests, and we knew it wasn't what we wanted, and that what we wanted would have costed a lot more work. So we put it on pause for a little bit. But we knew that that's what players wanted. We had tons of research that said they wish they had ways to play with their friends. That's what we wanted to build. Our initial version actually didn't have the reinforcements. I think that was a critical realization and feature that we added that finally gave it that width part that we were talking about, but then eventually put it back on the books to be worked on about a year from, I want to say almost exactly a year from now. We started planning what the next mode would be after we shipped Hyperroll, or before we shipped Hyperroll. As we were getting ready to ship that, we were like, okay, what's after? And Double Up was right around the corner.
Wow. It's crazy just to see how much work goes in on the back end before, I mean, us as the community ever hear anything. And I will tell you, when I first heard about Double Up and I read the line that said the thing about the reinforcements, I mean, that blew everybody's mind. And I, as someone who's a little bit more into the competitive scene, was like, oh no, this sounds crazy. This isn't, I don't want any of this. And as someone who's actually played quite a bit of Double Up now, I was completely wrong. It is so fun. It's such an incredible way to play with friends. Really, really glad that you guys were able to put that out. So, I mean, I was going to ask about how you guys feel about the community response to Double Up. I think I can assume that you guys have been pretty happy with how people have perceived Double Up. I know you guys do have it on a beta as of right now. Can you kind of talk about what the process is going to look like, taking it off and then putting it back on later on?
So obviously there's so many people playing and loving the mode. We're actually even questioning whether or not we're going to take it off. We don't know yet. That was the original plan, but we're discussing that. When we put the beta sticker on there, it was because there's so many features and things that we believed we could do even more of that are in that same vein of with friends that we weren't able to get to in time. You know, I don't want to spoil too much, but like the way in which you experience rank, the way in which you communicate, there's like other things outside of the game too that we want to invest in for the official Double Up release that didn't get to for Set 6 launch. So we're like, we definitely want to ship this because when we did our first playtest with reinforcements, we're like, we can't not release this. Like it's clearly fun in and of itself. So we just said, let's just slap a beta sticker on there, and then when it's ready, it's ready. And then the response has been overwhelmingly positive. I think we're reconsidering that timeline.
Now let's take a step back. One of the things you mentioned earlier on is that one of your responsibilities as a product lead is to talk about developing the theme of a set. And that is such a wild concept to me and to a lot of people who just, you know, that they have no responsibility that is anywhere near as unique as building the set theme. Can you talk a bit about what the process looks like to developing a theme set?
Yeah, totally. I'm sort of like the steward for that process. You know, the creative ideas themselves, we open up to the entire team. Because we have so many passionate folks who play TFT just directly on the team, we have a process, I want to say about 9 months before a set actually ships, where we say, hey, everyone, it's pitch time. Like, just throw in a slide deck your craziest ideas for a thematic that works for TFT. And that process kind of looks like, you know, putting together 5th or 8 champions and hopefully like a backlog of other ones that you could use to develop what would feel like a cohesive thematic and storyline for a TFT set. What that entails, we leave pretty broad, to be honest, because, you know, we want wacky things. And publicly, we've memed about the idea of food fight tactics, but so that's a pitch that I actually wrote in the deck one day, and I was like, what if we actually did it? Of course, Mort's like, heck no, TJ, but you know what? Like, that's the amount of craziness that we want. Spectrum of broadativity, that's not really a word, but broadness for TFT sets. And that's where it all starts, is the team kind of puts things on paper and just comes up with ideas. Then that translates into us going to players and asking, hey, of these top ideas that we've kind of narrowed down based off the goals of a set, what we're kind of trying to achieve, you know, if we just did space before that, we can't really do a space one again, down to like a list of 10-ish. And we show players via research. Sometimes those slip out, people share them, but generally it's pretty behind the scenes. No one really notices we're sending out surveys with a list of set ideas, and we ask players, which ones do you like the most? And that gives us, you know, a guiding principle as to where to kind of target. We don't use the top picked one because sometimes there's other reasons we wouldn't want to do it, such as the skin line was not interchangeable enough, or we just didn't feel like this was the right time for that theme. Or for example, for XP1 or Arcane, that release, it was like the company knew we wanted to do something within that space. So that's why we chose that direction instead. And eventually we pick one, and then the art team goes crazy. That's where the actual thing comes to life, where they build like a thematic seed of what is this thing that we're talking about. For Gizmos and Gadgets, back when we first pitched it, it was like just Piltover ends on like that was the core idea, and then they turned it into the thematic that you see today. And then that's where everything starts. That's where you get all the art created. That's where the champion roster starts getting locked in, the champion traits and names and abilities. And eventually, things start to come cohesively together once we pick a direction for the team.
Now, I've heard in the past that, and correct me if I'm wrong, so multiple sets are often worked on at the same time. Is that correct? Because it sounds like if you're saying it's a 9-month process between the pitch of one set and then the development starts, there has to be some sort of overlap. Is that true?
That's true, yeah. We usually have about two, whether sets and mid-sets are generally pretty overlapping, and in some rare certain months, 3.
Wow. So at that time, do you have is it 2 separate development teams that are just devoted to every other set? Do you have some people working on multiple sets at the same time as well?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. At each different phase, there are different skill sets required. So, some folks are, pushing out their part of one set and then on to the next. Other folks are kind of jumping between because their skill sets are needed on both sides. And some folks are just like rogue warriors that help out wherever it might be needed.
Sure.
So it's definitely a bit of a mix there.
Now let's talk about Arcane. Arcane, obviously, I mean, it seems like something that might just change the world in terms of how people engage with Riot content forever. I mean, it really took the world by storm. It topped the charts on Netflix. I imagine brought in a large population of new players into a myriad of different Riot games. Can you talk about what it was like to bring TFT into that gigantic moment of the Arcane release?
It was a lot of fun to kind of participate in the Riot X Arcane moment, is what we kind of call it externally. That whole process started a while ago, where it was like a call to action for all the game teams of like, hey, we're gonna do this moment where we're gonna be making something awesome from players. Show us how you can participate. And that's when we got that call to action, the whole team kind of started spinning its wheels of like, how can we do this for TFT? And what we realized is TFT is actually one of the best games at doing something like that. Kind of partnering with another IP to bring it to life in a way that's both TFT specific, but also feels cohesive as part of a moment, because we have so many things that with our set model change dramatically, right? We kind of throw out the whole set and bring stuff in brand new. So it allows us to almost create an entire experience specifically towards that arcane-like feeling, I call it, for TFT. And yeah, that one call to action from the company was all it took to get the team really just ideas left and right. And it's not really what can we do, it's what should we do at that point for TFT, because there's so many opportunities and options. We sort of start to narrow it down based on all the wacky and fun ideas in the TFT team land into what eventually became that experience we shipped alongside all the other games and the Arcane show.
Now, obviously, Arcane was in production for a very long time. I imagine internally, your team or different people at Riot probably knew that Arcane was coming out for quite a while. I mean, at what point did you realize that the set release was going to coincide with Arcane? Was that done on purpose years in advance to actually just be the perfect timing?
Almost dumb luck, to be honest.
Okay.
I think we extended the patch of when we figured out the date. Eventually, the team learned the date. We just said, "Oh, it is one patch before when we already were planning to do a set. So like, let's just move it and extend it by one." So it was dumb luck, just to be honest.
Incredible. Yeah, beautiful coincidence for sure. Now, a lot of the people I talk to in these interviews are typically from the competitive scene. Compared to the casual scene, obviously it's a bit more of a niche community. The large majority of players play TFT casually. But as someone who's a part of the more macro side of the TFT team, I'm curious to get your perspective on how important you actually think the competitive scene is to the long-term health of TFT.
It's incredibly important. Even if your general player base isn't participating at that premier level of competition, they see it. They look up to it. It is their aspiration as they're playing casually for something more meaningful to make this game out of. You don't have to have aspirations to be number one challenger, but most, I think, of TFT players, it's almost entirely most of them, play ranked because that feeling of being better at the game is fulfilling. It is a core pillar of teamfight tactics, and having that competitive scene gives them something to look up to. It gives them something to aspire to, and it gives them even inspiration for what they do in their game, sometimes poorly. So I find it critical to kind of creating an ecosystem that give players multiple reasons to want to play our game, both just for fun, but otherwise for even that small motivation to just get better and better over time.
Now, back in June, I believe, I sat down with Mort, and he was actually telling me during the time that TFT was going through this internal phase of growth. You guys were hiring quite a bit. There was so much work to be done. I'm curious, I guess, two things. One, I imagine with Arcane coming out, there's probably a bit of a phase of growth. But I am curious just to know what it's like to constantly be going through different phases of growth, and then you meet it, and then suddenly you have to grow again. I mean, what does that look like internally?
It's a lot of hopes and ambitions to do everything and anything players want, but also being able to accept that, like, hey, today we don't have enough people to do that. Let's get there. And it's tough because I think our team is probably one of the most ambitious I've ever worked with. And that, as in turn, sometimes means you just put a lot of heart and soul into it, which can be a cyclical cycle of negativity in terms of like working too much. But we do a pretty good job talking with each other and being like, hey, we know we want to deliver amazingness to players. We know that this is our path, and here's what we want to become. We have to sometimes pace ourselves. It's a constant talk of like it's kind of a marathon, not a sprint, to quickly get to wherever we need to, or wherever like the most highest demanded feature is. And that's what a lot of that process kind of looks like as we bring people on. On top of that, I think there's another important aspect, which is culture. Our team, like the game represents, is incredibly memey. Right? We like to have fun with the game we create. We like for it to be penguins dabbing at each other, and etc. Hiring is also bringing people onto that culture. I think every time people join the team, one of the most funny things that they recognize is our Slack and Google Hangouts chat culture is very much like just spamming and laughing and pointing and making fun of like things in a very positive light, or hyping things up, which is very different than most teams I've worked on. And I think that's another aspect of kind of growing the team, is just onboarding them onto that experience. At first, it's a little bit of sticker shock for most, like, whoa, I didn't expect people to be having this much fun during a meeting for any particular reason. But then eventually, everyone's like, wow, this is great.
Well, I mean, you heard it here first. TFT is the place to work. So I do have a bit of a weird question, I guess. One of the criticisms I've heard of TFT over the last couple of years is that for a long time, it's actually kind of difficult to spend money on TFT compared to some other games like League. I mean, a lot of these games were cosmetics out the wazoo, so easy to just spend hundreds and thousands of dollars on the game, and people wanted to engage with TFT and support the game with their money. And obviously, it seems like there's been a bit more of a priority there in the last couple sets. We have new boards, we have chibis, booms. I mean, the TFT coin on mobile seems like there is more of a priority on monetizing the game. Can you kind of speak to that? Is that an important part of TFT? Was it not important before? Like, what kind of was going on there?
Yeah, totally. Monetizing a game is important for the long-term sustainability. Ultimately, we want to build a game that's going to be around for generations, and to do that, it needs to be financially sustainable. TFT has always been in that camp, so we've mostly always prioritized making the best experience we can because we made the game so fast, right? We had only a fixed small amount of developers in the team, so a lot of our time was just spent making a great game. Of course, we needed to stay, like I just called out, financially sustainable, so we've been doing efforts here and there. But as we've been growing as a team, we're able to expand our scope into spaces that we find next in priority, which one of them is to better give players ways in which they can appreciate TFT with their wallets.
Sure.
We've been expanding the portfolio of things for players could buy, like with chibis, and we have a lot more in store. But the main reason in the past that it hasn't been a priority or just hasn't been as quickly iterated on was, one, team size, and two, we actually are a pretty reasonably financially stable game. So it was more important to us to nail what makes a good set, what makes TFT enjoyable for all players. Because if we know we have that, then we know we can be viable long term, and the rest of it will come, right? If players play your game as long as you give them something worthwhile to spend their money on, and they have the financial means to do so, they generally will. So we knew that was second in priority towards making a great game.
I love it, yeah. And I mean, there are many people like me. We have our wallets ready. As soon as you guys have something out, I mean, we're ready to hear about it. Now, typically, I normally do Twitter questions, but just because of the timeline of this, I didn't actually get a chance to post that online. So if you guys are watching, make sure to keep an eye out on Twitter for future guests so that you guys can get your questions in. But I still do have one community question. This is actually coming in from That's Admirable, who wanted to know what the most unexpected outcome from this set has been.
Oh, unexpected outcome. It's kind of cliche. I want a better one. I just talked about it. It definitely would be. I'm going to bundle it all together. The word of mouth factor of us releasing Double Up and Augments has caused kind of a certain type of engagement we've never seen with the TFT set before. And we'll get into specific numbers, and I think this was the most like, whoa, what the heck? I didn't know this was possible. Was that the set came out and people were playing more and more every day. What we saw was people were bringing in their friends. Double Up helped with that, but also sharing like the crazy fights that Augments have added to the game was something that we didn't really have in TFT before. It was generally TFT's gameplay is kind of hard to appreciate, but the absurdity that some moments Augments were able to give us made players share those things, and those things eventually in turn led to more people coming back and playing TFT again. I think that was probably one of the most surprising things, is I didn't foresee that Augments would create that social viability aspect on top of the existence of Double Up, kind of combining together for almost like a perfect storm. But it's definitely something we're super happy that happened.
Man, I mean, I gotta say, Set 6 has been, at least for me, by far my favorite. It has been a game or it has been a set where I've actually been able to invite a lot of my friends who stopped playing, didn't play that much, especially with Double Up. I mean, it's everything you're saying. There's something so special about this set, and I do hope that you guys can keep up the great work. I mean, there are so many people in this community that appreciate all the work you guys put into it, and you can see the passion in it and the hard work. And yeah, I just want to say thank you for everything you've done in this community, and it really does go a long way to allow people like me and other people in this community to just put their passion into something and spend their time doing something they love. So thank you for everything you've done. But TJ, that is actually all the questions I had for you. So before we go, is there anything you'd like to shout out?
I did definitely want to say, like, I thank you back. I thank the community back. And I just want to say I am one face of a team of many. We have such a talented team, and coming to work every day is only possible because of that team that I have behind everything that you see. The culture we have, the openness and vulnerability we have amongst each other is what makes this team so great, and is what makes it possible for us to constantly deliver on expectations and have that passion required and care for the game required to do what we've done with Set 6. And I couldn't have done without them. So a big shout out to all of the developers on TFT. Every single one of them, they're all amazing.
Awesome. Well, TJ, again, thank you so much for sitting down with me. And for everyone watching this video, thank you guys for watching all the way through to the end of this. For more TFT coverage and content, make sure you guys like and subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.